बारिश होती है, घर गिर जाते हैं, हम लोग चले जाते हैं दूसरे गांव में। बहुत पानी हमारे गांव में आता है, हिजरत करनी पड़ेगी, मजबूरी करनी पड़ेगी, क्या होगा। बारिश बहुत होती है, पानी होता है, तो बहुत दूर जाता है, 80 किलोमीटर 100 किलोमीटर जाना पड़ेगा, इतनी बारिश होती है। हिजरत मजबूरी में करनी होती है। यो हम बहुत सर्दी आ रही है, उसके में हम सर्दी बच्चे सर्दी मर जाएंगे, घर बना रहे हैं दूसरे। ज़मीन ज़मींदारों की है, 2 साल 4 साल जो खेती का काम करते हो तो बैठने देते हैं। अगर खेती का काम जवाब देते हो तो हिजरत करनी पड़ेगी। गवर्नमेंट हमारा को जगह प्लाट दे, पक्की जगह दे, हम आराम से सुकून से ज़िंदगी गुजार सकते हैं।
With the stock taking of the present situation, it will be important for the concerned authorities to undertake a fresh review of the situation, identify the major causes that in fact dislocated the people from various hinterlands and made some of these towns the recipients of incoming migrations, and incorporate the same into the planning framework for these cities. Migrations in our case happen more as a consequence of the climatic push. When the climatic situation, especially the torrential rains, struck us harder than expected, the people were caught unaware and they had no option except to save their lives. In some cases, they had to lose very precious and very scarce resources that they possessed. And this was a pattern that we saw almost all across the locations in Sindh where this torrential rain struck heavily. So perhaps if climate warnings, social mobilization around these locations, and the assistance of local organizations that existed, both governmental organizations as well as non-governmental organizations, if this could have been sought earlier, I think the damage and the plight of the people could have been somehow compromised. We could have perhaps allowed people to leave their locations in a more organized and disciplined manner, rather than the type of chaotic situations that we were all able to see. I believe that climate change, and especially extended monsoon regime, is now going to become a new normal, and in order to be prepared for that status, it will be important for us to develop a very carefully designed early warning system for people to be alarmed about the incoming climate change regimes and leave their places of habitat to safer locations. And for accommodating people in safer locations also, we require proper arrangements so that people should not feel any kind of constraint for the temporary time period where they are allowed to camp.
Climate induced, or when we tamper with climate, it has induced migration, which has been happening for the last 40 years in Pakistan. Currently, of course, this has become much more aggravated because we have more frequency of rains, more intensity of rains, more frequency of floods, greater snow melt, and these things are happening in very recent years, and that of course causes massive dislocation and damage. Climate change is causing its devastation, but a lot of it is also man-made. If you build a house in the way of the water, that house will be washed away. So the question is, why build something that will obstruct the water or play with nature? We cannot fight nature, we have to live with nature. Sindh has a particular problem of very small villages, even 5-house villages. Scattered, thatched houses, low-lying areas, they are bound to be wiped away whenever there is a flood. Even if there is a strong winds, these houses are blown away. So what we did after the 2010 floods, when I was in government, we rehabilitated 41 villages because that's the budget we had, and we built. These were all villages with at least 150 houses. Some of these villages were more than 250 houses, and the houses it was on higher ground. Houses had 2 feet of foundation and 1 foot plinth. The plinth is actually the platform above the ground, so that when there's a little bit of water in the village, it doesn't enter the house. This was supposed to be the model for the rest of Sindh, but it was never taken up. It is a successful experiment, and I think that all the government has to do is follow its own examples. We should assume that there will be more rains and there will be more floods. So we have to map the route the rainwater takes. Some of it is known already to the irrigation department, but maybe fresh surveys can help. We have to create structures that will channel this water, especially the water coming down the Kirthar hills, which come down in torrents and wipe off everything in its way. We have to channel that water so that the towns and cities and structures and factories and whatever installations we have are protected. We have to, the drainage channels that Sindh has are meant for taking irrigation runoff, the water that is drained out of rice fields and sugarcane fields. They don't have the capacity to take flood water, so these channels have to be widened. The LBOD channel has to be widened so that the flood water can flow out. Then there are obstructions along the river. There are private dams which have been built by farmers to protect their own farm from the floods, but these dams then don't allow the water to flow into the sea. All these obstructions have to be removed. The Sindh government has already passed a law that all these private structures are illegal. They should be enforced.